This is by far the worst cult I've ever heard of. This might actually be the worst case I've ever covered. There's gonna be parts of the story where you're just not gonna believe what I'm telling you because it's so unbelievable and disturbing. Like, just imagine every terrible thing that you could do to other human beings. Rock Terrio, the cult leader from the Ant Hill Kids cult, did it. French-Canadian Rock Terrio was born and raised in Quebec, Canada. He was one of 8 children in an extremely religious family that was also abusive. Rock's dad would force his sons to wear heavy boots and then take turns kicking each other in the shins, and he would call this a game. Rock Terrio has been described as popular, smart, charming, and charismatic. And apparently he did not have a hard time with the ladies. Apparently they found him quite attractive. Rock Terrio was also extremely manipulative, and he would do whatever it takes to get what he wants. He got married for the first time when he was 21 years old, and his bride was 17, and together they had 2 children. For a little bit, Rock seemed like a normal family guy, but this did not last long. Rock became extremely erratic. He was addicted to alcohol and substances, and he was also cheating on his wife all of the time. After Rock's first wife divorced him, he married the woman that he was cheating on her with. Please forgive me if you hear Sunny a lot throughout this video. She has a lot of energy right now. Rock Terrio's bizarre behavior continued and escalated, and he became obsessed with medicine and religion. He became a leader within his church where he would do sermons. And he began telling the members of his church that he was a prophet and he could speak to God. Rock was very charming, and he had loyal followers that believed him 100%. And Rock Terrio is very much a classic cult leader, so he also told people that the apocalypse was coming soon, the world was ending, and that he could also heal people with the power of God. One of his followers' wives had leukemia, and Rock convinced her to stop going to her treatments so that he could heal her with the power of God. And because of this woman sadly passed away. Rock's bizarre, erratic behavior and his extreme beliefs eventually got him kicked out of his church. So this was the official start of his cult. Rock had a small, loyal following at this point, but it would eventually grow more and more and more. And somehow Rock was able to convince these people to leave their lives behind and follow him. They left their jobs, they left their families. If they were in school, they dropped out because the world was ending, so none of it mattered. He moved his cult into the mountains, into the wilderness, and together they lived in a commune in the remote, isolated wilderness. This is about 1979. Rock wanted complete control over his followers, so he stripped them of their identities. He decided what they wore, he changed their names, and then he stole their wives. Rock had his legal wife at the cult with him, but he also married every woman there and eventually got them all pregnant. And in total, he had 22 children on top of the 2 children he already had with his first wife. He barely fed his followers. He forced them to do all the work at the commune, which is why he eventually started calling them the Ant Hill Kids. And when his followers started to question him, Rock turned to violence to regain control. So this is the beginning of the extreme brutality in this case. This is your warning now that every terrible thing that you could possibly do to someone, Rock Terrio did it. Rock used violence and torture to punish his victims. Here are some of the things that he did. He would hang his followers by the ceiling and then rip the hair that was all over their body one by one. He would go to the bathroom on them. He would force them to sit on hot stoves, force them to shoot each other in the shoulder, and force them to eat dead rodents amongst other things like feces. And this wasn't just the adults, he would punish the children as well. Like, one of the things that he would do was nail a child to a tree and then have the other children stone each other. He would force his followers to cut off other members' toes, or even force them to break their own legs with sledgehammers. And the absolute worst of it, Rock would SA his followers' children. And he would do all of this to test their loyalty and also to punish them, but it was just the beginning. A few years into the cult, a guy named Guy Veer joined the cult, and he was assigned the role as a caretaker for the children. One day, a 2-year-old boy named Samuel just would not stop crying, so Guy actually beat the 2-year-old to the point where he was like in really bad shape. But remember, Rock Terrio believed that he could cure people with the power of God. So he decided that he was gonna do a surgery on the 2-year-old boy Samuel, but this is just another form of Rock Terrio's sadistic torture. To sterilize the boy before surgery, he forced rubbing alcohol down Samuel's throat. Then he performed the surgery with a pair of scissors, and sadly, 2-year-old Samuel did not survive the surgery. And Rock took zero accountability for Samuel's death, and instead he fully blamed Guy. And to punish Guy, he was gonna do another surgery. With a razor blade, he castrated Guy, which is like removing his manhood. Somehow Guy actually survived, and then he escaped the cult and he went and told the police about the cult and Samuel's murder. The commune was raided, most of the children were taken away, and Rock Terrio was arrested. But he was released a little over 1 year later and just went back to being a cult leader like nothing happened. And it was sadly not long later until there was more death. One of Rock's wives had just given birth to one of Rock's many children, and allegedly she was so scared of Rock and what he was capable of that she did not want her newborn baby to grow up with him. So one night she left her newborn baby outside in the Canadian wilderness during the winter because she believed that freezing to death would be a better fate. At this point, it's the mid-1980s. We're like 5 years into the cult, and Rock Terrio is more brutal than ever. He beat one of his pregnant wives until she lost the baby. I don't know where he found one of these, but he used a blowtorch on the stomach of one of his wives just minutes after she gave birth. He would pour boiling water on his followers. He would break their toes one by one. He would pull out all their teeth with pliers one by one. There was a woman named Solange that one day started complaining about stomach pains. So Rock offered to do another operation. And this was just as brutal and sadistic and not sterile as the last, and Solange also did not survive. After they buried Solange's body, Rock started having dreams of her. So he had his followers dig up her body and then he married her corpse. And he planned to bring her back from the dead, and he did this by cutting a hole in her skull and then pleasuring himself onto her brain. I know, I told you that you weren't even gonna believe some of the things I had to say. This obviously did not bring her back to life, so she was cremated, but he continued to pleasure himself into her ashes. It's so disrespectful, disgusting, and disturbing. There was another woman that was a part of his cult named Gabrielle. This was one of his wives and actually the mother of the baby that was left out in the cold. These are a few of the things that Rock Terrio did to Gabrielle. And remember, I'm not even saying the worst of it because I don't even think I could get away with saying some of the worst things that he did. He burned her private area. He ripped out 8 of her teeth because she was complaining that one of them was giving her a toothache. He cut off one of her fingers. And then one day when she was complaining that one of her fingers was feeling a little stiff, Rock Terrio cut off her arm. She escaped the cult a few days later to go to the hospital, and the hospital called the police. For his crimes, he was sentenced to 12 years in prison, but after a more intensive investigation, they discovered Solange's murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison. But somehow, Rock Terrio still had followers and 3 of his wives. None of them were his legal wives, but he was still given visits with them in prison, and behind bars, he had 4 more children. And then in 2011, Rock Terrio was killed by his cellmate. And that is the case of Rock Terrio and the Ant Hill Kids cult. If you've been watching me for a while, I want to know if you agree that that was one of the worst cases I've ever covered. I want to hear all of your thoughts, but remember to please be respectful because you don't know who could be in the comments. One of these children that grew up, was born in this cult, could be in the comments today. So just please be respectful, but let me know all of your thoughts in the comments. And while you're there, please let me know what case you want to see me cover next. Thank you to everyone that suggested that I covered this case. And I will see you guys all next time in my next video. Please be a good person to your fellow person.